This is where I always bang into the mic and mess everything up. We're good to go. Welcome to the Boardcast, first ever daytime episode.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
And that's the one that we're drinking beers at.
Yeah, I know, you guys are drunk.
It's always 5 o'clock somewhere. So.
Yeah, always is. Welcome. Today's guest, Marcus Stocker.
Hello. Very nice.
Quicksilver, Canoe, Lib, DC, Roxy, God knows how many brands representative.
Let's not forget Bent Metal as well. And
Bent Metal.
Everyone forgets Bent Metal.
There's too many brands.
It's Mervyn,
to
Quicks, DC and Roxy, basically. But yeah.
Long-time industry guy, far out.
But also, there's a lot of history prior to industry, which I don't know about.
Which is why we're here, to find out more about.
Well, yes, I have been around for quite a while, let's just say. But I've always managed to stay in the industry because it's something that I've loved so much. And snowboarding to me, even though I started at quite a late age, it never got old for me. So I went through many generations of snowboarders that I've seen come and go. And some of them still go down and ride once a year or whatever it is. But for me, it just never got old. I still love riding every day that I ride. And a lot of crew like, oh, why even bother about Australia? It's like, mate, going down and riding Thredbo or Perisher or wherever through the gum trees.
There's still something about it.
There's something about it. And any day snowboarding is better than not snowboarding. So.
Yeah. I have to say, you are the one of the funnest people to ride with.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you.
You are.
What are we going to do from the very start?
Yeah, from the beginning. So where'd you grow up? Give a bit about your childhood.
Yeah, okay.
Are you Newcastle?
No, so there's a bit of conjecture and there was a lot of different stories about where I grew up and where I was from, and a lot, like some people said I was from the Sunshine Coast, and other people that knew me a bit better were like, originally from sort of the Central Coast, but some of those are like somewhat true, but it actually starts way before then. So I was born in North Vancouver. 17th
Canadian.
December. Yeah, so 17th of December 1971, North Vancouver. So I'm actually Canadian. My original mum, who passed away in 77, was actually, she had a Russian background. So, and my dad was Swiss. So I'm actually a Swiss, Russian, Canadian, Australian.
Whoa.
Which is the epitome of Ibiza, basically. But yeah, so I think we lived in Canada till, I think it was 82 that we moved to Australia. My dad was working for Amex, a mining company, and he got transferred over here. So a lot of people go, oh, mate, you lived in Canada, like your early years, you must have skied and everything. But I never skied. Well, technically never skied. My dad probably bought me skis. I remember he bought me skis. I think I was like 7 years old. Bought me a set of skis. Never got me a lift pass. Never taught me to ski.
Just push you down the street.
Literally just made me walk up the mountain, Cyprus. I remember driving there. Walk up the mountain and you just come down and ski, sort of thing. And I just went up the mountain crying, and I'd come down the mountain crying, basically. And then my dad would go, well, there you go, skiing's not for you, sort of thing. And I was like, oh, thanks, Dad. And then about like half a year later, he backs over my skis in the combi van and never bought me a new pair. So I never actually went back to the snow until I was 21. I was going to Newcastle Uni at the time and had a few mates of mine. We might get to there somewhere down the track as well. And they'd been snowboarding before, and I remember them saying to me, they're like, oh, we're going to go down snowboarding. It's going to be like for 3 days, like $400. And I was like, what? That's like almost a surfboard. Like, how good could it be? I went down with them for 3 days, and I guess I'll just embellish that story a little bit. The first day they took me straight to the top of Crackenback. I've got no freaking idea. Can we be a little bit?
Yeah, you can swear.
Okay, so I was going to say some of this might be a little bit warts and all. So I was like, guys, I can't freaking snow. I don't even know what I'm doing. They're like, mate, you're a pretty good surfer. You'll figure it out. I did not figure it out. I literally, I can remember hanging on to my toe side edge and like butt sliding on my heel side edge from the top of Crackers all the way to the bottom, shitting myself. Like I had no idea about edges because once you realise surfers, it's back foot. Doesn't have edges, obviously, but surfing's much more back foot sort of thing, and snowboarding's like front shoulder, front foot sort of thing. I had no idea. The next 2 days we did at Guthaga, which was a bit more mellow, and I think it was the end of the second day, I kind of started getting the edge thing a little bit, And then I remember at the end of the third day, mate, the lift had closed and I hiked back up underneath that little double like 3 times because I was absolutely hooked. I mean, I was doing like kind of doing some turns and that, but I was doing like little flatland 3Os and stuff. And I was going, this is the fucking coolest shit, man. Like, and I was totally hooked. And so one of the guys I was down there with was Mick Simpson. He'd already done a season at Thredbo working for Randy Wynham.
What year is this? 92?
This would have been 92, yeah.
Right.
This is like the end of the season in 92.
Yeah.
So he'd already done a season. He'd already filmed Burnt Toast then, which is one of his first movies, which had all the boys in it. And even like Slaznek and a few guys came out for that as well. But he already knew the crew as well. But he'd seen the sport and what it could be sort of thing. And in the car on the way back to Newcastle, I remember him, he was in my ear, man. He's like, mate, this sport's only starting out. You guys, you could be really good at this. And it just started ticking over my head. I'm like, fuck, man, maybe I could be, you know? Like, I love surfing, but I'm like, mate, this is sick. Like, so I went back to Newey and literally probably 2 weeks later, I couldn't get it out of my head. I think we did one more trip down there, 2 days. Came back, totally hooked again, or still hooked. And I went down to Balmoral and bought a board, which was like an old Morrow. I think they just ripped me for it. I think I paid like $5.50 for it. It was like a second-hand board. But that sat up in my on my dresser basically. Yeah. For the next 2 to 3 months, and I was just dreaming about going snowboarding, sort of thing. And so this is all kind of leading somewhere. But yeah, go. Sorry.
Canada to Newcastle.
Oh God, no. Okay, so lived in Sydney for probably 3 years or 4 years.
Right.
But we bought a holiday house in Terrigal.
Yeah.
And so eventually we just moved up to Terrigal. And so I did years 7 till 12 at Terrigal.
Yeah.
Basically had a year off. Didn't really know. I got into Newcastle uni, but I didn't really know if I wanted to go to uni yet. Went up to Queensland. There's a story with that as well. But went up to Queensland, followed my parents up there. Worked in a bakery. So I'd worked in bakeries since I was 14. In like the hot summer, I was like, holy fuck, I'm not working in a bakery for the rest of my life. Like, this is too much sort of thing. So when I thought I better go to uni sort of thing. So then that was 1990 that I had that gap year or whatever it was working in a bakery. And then 91, 92 were my first 2 years at uni where I was doing Bachelor of Science majoring in geology.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What made you pick that?
Well, my dad worked for a mining company. So I had this background in geologists and just in mining and whatever it was. The main reason would have been the fact that I didn't want an office job. I didn't want to sit behind a desk. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that like a geologist would be out in the field somewhat sort of thing, you know? So
it's a common story, hey? You look for a career that just doesn't lock you into a desk.
Yeah, that's the one thing I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wasn't going to go in an office job 9 to 5. That just wasn't going to be me.
Can't blame anyone for that. So Newcastle, I keep going to Newcastle because I want to know how you ended up being a night supporter.
Well, that's how, because it was the franchise started back then, pretty much. So
yeah, okay. So you are 90. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because that was around the time they entered the comp.
Yeah, it's around about then, yep.
Sorry, I always end
football.
up on this NRL.
That's okay, yeah. I've been a night supporter since then.
Yeah, and they're like one of my arch enemies.
We'll have to do like little
I haven't got over
podcasts.
97.
I was going to say 97, that was a great moment.
I've never got over it. They keep replaying it. It breaks me. I still haven't got over it.
So I was up at the Queenscliff room up at the Diggers Club. I reckon there was probably 500 people in that room. All Seagull supporters. Me with my Knights jersey on, the only one, mate. When that final try got scored, I just got belted with beer cans. I was covered in beer. I didn't care though, because I was like, "Throw your cans at me, we won!" You know, like
I'm kind of hoping I was one of the ones throwing.
You may have,
I was definitely in the same room.
They were hitting me in the head and everything. I'm like, I don't even care. We just won the grand final.
So the big long tables.
Yeah.
I was one of the people throwing the cans. Probably. I was so. Anyway, yeah. Well, I just always wanted to know how you ended up.
Yeah, that's it.
A night supporter.
And also very much a Colorado Avalanche supporter as well. So ice hockey, again, another sport. But they were originally the Quebec Nordiques, I think it was. And they became they became the Colorado Avalanche when I started doing seasons in Breckenridge. So I became an Avalanche fan as well. So
that's so your childhood was interesting to say the least, and didn't really lead you to snowboarding. It was more just a decision with your mates. Yeah,
it was actually only a decision by them. And I, you know, they said over and over, and they're like, just let's go down this week. And I'm like, mate, it's too much money, mate. Like I just couldn't see how a weekend could be $400. I mean, that weekend now is like $2,000 or whatever.
Yeah, imagine if I was going to say, imagine if you're a kid now.
But the attraction, the hook, the addiction was instantaneous. It was instantaneous, and part of that's just never left. It's still actually there, kind of now. So,
is it different to surfing, or do you have that addiction to surfing as well? I know you do.
I do for sure,
but like
surfing, yeah, I think for me, it's easier to live on the beach and surf every day in shit waves and whatever most of the time, whatever it is, and snowboard when I can, as opposed to living in the mountains. I did live in Jindy, obviously for like almost 4 years. I was doing some time away between the seasons to go surfing for a couple of weeks or whatever it was. But I miss the ocean so much. Like I remember like going for a swim before work every day, like down at Lake Jindy. And in the end, I was like, literally like making little like boulder points and stuff and watching these little building little sandbars and stuff. Watching these little waves like going on. I'm like, I'm actually losing my mind here. So that's when I decided to leave ESS and come back up to Sydney sort of thing. But the mountains, I have to be in the ocean or the mountains, one of the two.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What age did you start surfing?
Well, I guess I would have had a foamy probably at the age of like 11 or whatever it was. I mean, I remember doing trips from St Ives to Curl, but I wasn't really surfing then. I was just might have been paddling out or whatever it was. Yeah. But when I moved to Terrigal, my parents bought me my first fiberglass surfboard.
So it was here in Australia that you started?
I didn't surf in Canada.
No.
God, no.
You need a 12 mil wet.
Not even close. Yeah, so
I wanted to know how passionate he was.
But that became a total addiction. So me and my brother, he was a couple of years younger than me. We surfed every morning before school. We'd surf every afternoon after school. And sometimes we'd surf when we were meant to be at school as well. So I remember a couple of times coming home with like zinc cream and that on my face, and Mum going, "Why have you got zinc cream on your face?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, the teacher said the sun's like really strong in the playground." And I'm like, obviously they would have known that I was totally bullshit. Like, I thought I was getting away with it, but yeah, surfing was an absolute, complete and utter lifestyle addiction, which is why, we never really skated or anything like that. I played a little bit of footy when I was younger, but then the injuries would stop us surfing and stuff. So surfing was everything.
Everything. And then
until snowboarding came along. And then it was like, then I could spend 6 months away from the surf because I was snowboarding.
Yeah, right. So Newcastle, you're at uni and you've done a few snow trips. Did you finish your degree?
No. So basically, we were living at Bar Beach, and there was like 4 blocks of 4 units. And every time I'd walk out for a surf, I'd get out in the street and walk back in, whichever way it was, I'd be looking in there was the end block before the street. There was a window with a Craig Kelly in it. I kept looking up at it going, there's a dude up there that snowboards. I've got to meet this guy. So later that year, obviously, this is like the end of 92. It might have been like December or whenever it was. I finally met him. So his name was Gavin O'Toole, who ended up becoming, back in those days, one of Australia's better snow photographers. So I went upstairs, had a couple of beers with him, and he was going, "Mate, I'm going to Colorado in February. Like, you should come with me." And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, man. I might do. I'm meant to be going to uni and doing my degree, but going snowboarding in Colorado sounds way better. And you're a photographer." I'm like, oh, my mind's just going ding, ding, ding. Like, this could be sick. So took off with him in Feb, deferred that year, basically. I never went back. But so we flew into San Fran. We got a one-way car hire to, I think we had to drop it in Denver somewhere. But we went out via sort of out of San Fran and through the Nevada desert. And crazy story. I think we left San Fran at like 4 p.m. or whatever it was. And we just started driving. And I think we were going to try to get to somewhere like in Utah. Anyway, we're out in the middle of the Nevada desert at like 10 o'clock at night, and we go past the sign, and it says, you're on America's loneliest highway. And I went, fuck, Gav, imagine if we ran out of petrol out here. No shit, half an hour later, we run out of petrol. Out in the middle of nowhere, it's like -10. Way in the distance, you could see some lights. So my buddy Gav takes off and goes, "Mate, you got to stay with the car, otherwise someone's going to take the car." I'm like, "Oh, well, righto, no worries." So he takes off. There's me just sitting there, just like in the freezing cold with the engine's not running. There's no petrol. I'm going, fuck, I'm going to die out here, man. Like, seriously. this like pickup truck with these dudes turn up like an hour later with like guns and stuff, and like they're like, you know, y'all ain't from here, are you? And I'm like, no. I'm thinking about all these movies of like dudes like Hitcher and that people just getting murdered out in the back roads of America. But crazy. My buddy Gav ends up getting picked up by this ex-paratrooper called Charlie. He takes him down to the nearest town and gets a jerry can and comes back. We put the petrol and go to that town, and this paratrooper who we should have bought dinner for bought us dinner and everything, a couple of beers and whatever, and stayed there that night. Yeah. So
right. Okay, so early on, you were thinking, go on a trip, have a photographer, maybe becoming a pro snowboarder. Or was it more, I just love snowboarding, I got to go snowboarding, see where this goes?
That's probably definitely more what it was like, I think. I think it was just, it happened to be beneficial that he happened to be a photographer as well. Right. But it was...
You got on with him, obviously.
Yeah, it was a way for me to have a place to go to with someone that knew people already. Yeah. He had a plan of where he was going to, and he knew people there. So where I didn't have any of that at all. I hadn't really met anyone yet in the industry. I hadn't met any other riders or anything like that. So.
I remember 92, I was in New Zealand probably, or at the time you were there, I would have been in Canada. We're still trying to figure out my timeline, but we'll worry about that later. So I was up in Canada, and there weren't a lot of pro snowboarders. There was a few guys floating around.
Yeah.
So how long before you figured, I'm riding well enough to kind of be one of these guys, or at least in Australia, be one of these guys?
So I think it's when I came back from those 3 months. I was probably riding. Well, I was riding a lot better than when I left, obviously. But it was that season in Australia, which was 93. I probably made some pretty big leaps and bounds then, and that's when I started riding with, I guess, the Threadbow posse. I mean, there was definitely other snowboarding posses, and when I say posse, like loosely, that it kind of was like that back then.
You were little gangs.
You kind of knew everyone that was on the mountain. Yeah. There wasn't that many people. I mean, there were 100%. Other snowboarders at Threadbow, let's say, but there weren't many. You know, it was like Dave Kelly, Tim Volantis, Aaron Latinovic. You know, Sean Gall, who already the season before he was all over it, but he wasn't really there much that season.
Yeah,
Jason Haynes, Shane Stevens.
It's funny.
Nathan Collicoat, Stu Johnson, it was the who's who sort of thing. I guess I got quite a bit better that season riding with those guys. Obviously, they were already riding a lot better. And
they were all like, I grew up skating at Coe Park, right? So Sean and Aaron,
you know them all,
they were in my year at school. Like we were all mates, and then I went overseas. So I kind of feel like I missed that part of the Australian industry because I was in New Zealand. I was doing seasons overseas, so. I always feel like I should have stayed a little bit. Yeah. Like it was sad that I went. I mean, we had our own little posse, right? Yeah. We were doing that in Queenstown. We had our own little crew of guys, and everyone knew everyone. And there's still some of my lifelong friends. Like I hang out with some of these guys and girls to this day. So it really was tiny as an industry.
Yeah, and it was still like, and like I say it now, like snowboarding, it's so different. The way it's quite. I'm trying to look for the right words, I suppose. But back then it was still very raw, very punk, it was like very anti-establishment as well, sort of thing.
The skiers didn't like you.
The skiers still hated you, basically. Yeah. And I don't want to go back to those days necessarily because there were full-on fights and
it was horrible.
People getting stabbed by poles and lift queues and whatever it was. But it was kind of fun and it felt raw, and it's just not like that anymore.
People getting stabbed.
They dead set whack. They'd like stab you with their, they'd all, whatever they could do, basically.
I told you the story of the cut track where we went past a guy on skis and we just went past him. We didn't say anything, do anything. He chased us because he could go faster because he had the ability to skate. And then he just started whacking the back of our legs with his pole. He's a big, tall dude. We were little kids now. Yeah. We were 18, 19-year-old kids, and this full-grown 40-year-old man was hitting us with his poles, whipping us. I was like, what the fuck?
Crazy.
Yeah, the whole thing was weird.
You wouldn't want to go back to those days.
Oh, no,
but it was it was about it was just bleached hair. It was like, stories of the boys leaving the bistro at Threadbow and literally full of piss, basically. They'd been drinking all afternoon and walking out and just walking across everyone's bonnets on the way out, sort of thing. Just pretty
it was punk rock.
It was pretty punk, for sure. Yeah, it was. That's because most of the snowboarders were punk skaters, pretty much.
Yeah, they were all skateboard bummers.
I had a surf background, but most of it was skate background, pretty much. And most of them, like I was thinking about it the other day when I was thinking about talking about sort of stuff, but most of the snowboarders then didn't come from money. They were all literally kind of scumbag.
Dirtbag.
We were all just living hand and foot, like
absolutely.
6 people living in a 2-bedroom unit, whatever it was. But there was a couple of guys that did have money, like Jason Onley, people like that.
Yeah, there were a few.
There was
mostly 2-minute noodles and Vegemite
Totally.
toast, right?
And so that's why it was kind of grungy and dirty, but it was kind of rad too at the same time.
It was sick. Like, I think that's what the culture's lost. I mean,
that's what
you don't want to go back there.
Yeah.
But the culture's lost that, the vibe of the thing, where you don't get the graphic that's got the real dirty punk rock feel to it anymore.
Yeah.
I loved it.
The 90s is in right now, but like you guys living through the 90s and having that raw experience.
They're bringing back bits of the 90s, the real gentrified bits.
The bits they want.
Yeah.
It's so clean and like polished.
They're not bringing back the Sean Palmer attitude of the 90s.
No.
They're bringing back the cool graphic that might have gone along with it.
Even if fans, when they try to do fuck, they put little like symbols in it, and they're just like, it's like a peace sign and like a world or a clover or something instead of actually writing it.
Yeah, I have early memories of like Sean Palmer winning events, and he would be up there with a bottle of Jack Daniels off his head and like a mohawk, a blonde mohawk or something, or he had a crusty thing he did for a while where he shaved the middle. And just had this it was wildly different.
It was like the whiskey movies as well and stuff like that. You know, they were all just blind drunk, breaking bottles over their heads.
Half the movie
that
was just
probably
chaos.
later 90s, early 2000s. I don't know.
It might have been later. Would have been 97 on.
Probably something like that, yeah.
But they were party videos with a little bit of snowboarding.
Yeah, with a bit of snowboarding.
Break it up.
Yeah.
That's what skateboarding was too as well.
Yeah, they were very similar. The skate.
It was a lifestyle as well as snowboarding or skateboarding.
It was just fun. And it was less corporate. It was less money involved. But it was also no chance of really making it a career, right? You'd get a bit of free stuff.
Do you think it had to clean up because the money came into it?
Yeah, yes and no. But I mean, I've been thinking about that a little bit too, because I was speaking to Adam Clumper yesterday about some of his team riders that we're sponsoring, whatever as well. But there was actually more money in snowboarding in the 90s than there is now.
Really?
Yeah, because the surf companies like Quicksilver, Billabong, Rip Curl, whatever, they were pumping surf dollars into snow. So...
That's
like Quicksilver, for what we would sell at Quicksilver now, 10 times the amount of product than we would have sold at Quicksilver back in the 90s. But we would have 10 times the budget in the 90s for snowboarding. So guys like Jason Haynes, he was on good money. For then, he was definitely on good money.
Yeah, right.
That sort of money just doesn't exist anymore. Like, I work for Quicksilver now, and our budget's it's just not there, basically. Yeah. So.
Why? Like, why is the shift in?
Well, again, they weren't taking the marketing dollars from the snow sales. They were using the surf budget and sponsoring the snow riders.
Because they saw potential in the snow market.
Potentially, yeah. Or they were just grabbing it because they had it basically too. Like Quicksilver and all that back in the 90s, they were making money hand over foot.
Yeah, okay.
That was before everything went
They were all independent companies too, right?
Yeah.
They were none of this giant conglomerate scenario that's going on at the moment where all the companies are getting eaten alive. So it's a very different time. But it's funny, like you talk about Quicksilver, half that range that we saw 3 months ago or whatever it was, 4 months ago.
It's the heritage range.
Was from the 90s.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it.
And we're selling shitloads of it too. It's kind of our biggest selling pieces now
is what
the
was
heritage
cool
range.
back then.
Yeah.
And it really does look right. And when I think snowboarding, I still think that 90s look is better than a lot of the gentrified
just like
tones that we've
clean
been
cut.
doing. It's just been really dull for the last probably 10 years.
Yeah.
It's really good that we're bringing back some of that heritage because it might inspire some kids to go out and start a brand or do something that's a little bit more cutting edge again.
Yeah, but how do they take on big companies like this now?
Well, there's always a space, right?
Yeah.
There's
sometimes.
always a way. I mean, it's getting harder and harder. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still a shame that there's not. I mean, you look at Pete Long was here a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Man, he's taking on.
Well, that's a great example, right?
Monster companies.
Yeah.
Like he's taking on Oakley and Burton with Anon and Dragon and so on. And he's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Like there is a way. You just got to do it right.
Yeah.
But and I watched most of that as well. And he's put a shitload of hard work into that sort of thing.
Ton of hard work.
Plus, he's Pete Long as well. He's kind of he's an oldie like me sort of thing. He still totally loves snowboarding. He's ingrained in the industry, you know.
Absolutely.
And that just that shows. You know? So
you got to
want to support people like that, you know. So,
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Just a quick question: are you two the same age?
Me and I'm 71. What
Oh,
year?
yeah, I'll turn.
I thought you were saying
I'm
you're 71 years
No,
old.
no.
You look great
Yeah,
for
I'm looking
70.
good.
No, yeah.
71.
No, so yeah.
I'm born in 71.
Yeah, so I turned
September.
52 last year in December 17th. So
Yeah, okay.
I'll be
I'm
looking at
2
my
months
53rd
older.
birthday this
2
year.
months older.
3 months. What date? It's December.
17th December.
Yeah, I'm 3 months
Okay.
older.
Yeah.
Sweet.
September
So we're
71.
Basically the same age.
Yeah,
yes.
right.
Still kicking.
So
Still kicking.
the time that you got into snowboarding, I was being born.
Yep. Thank you.
I started snowboarding way before Marcus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like 1989.
Yeah,
my
right.
first board is.
Yep.
Yeah. There was none of
Crazy.
us. There was Sean Gall, Aaron.
It's crazy to
Yeah.
see how
There's a
much
very few
it's
people at the
Of
snow.
all guys like,
The
Jeff
Graham
Sawyer
brothers.
and that, and you know, there's a couple of the originators, I suppose. And
Yeah, we didn't know them. They were older than us. We were kids. Like we were 17, 18.
yeah.
And then I had the Graham brothers and we all took off. Me
Yeah.
and the Graham brothers and Jason, someone or other, I can't remember his last name. We all took off to New Zealand and for some reason decided that was the way to go. I think it was wanted to travel.
So that's interesting. So instead of doing seasons here, you just
We
went to New Zealand.
Yeah, we were doing, I did 90, this is the question. I've got one of the season passes. I did 92 or 3 in New Zealand. And then
in Queenstown or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were riding Coronet Peak, Donut Mountain.
Yeah.
It snowed all around it. Never snowed on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Remarks.
Sounds like Breckenridge, yeah.
Remarkables. Then we did a season in Treble Cone, like that, Wanaka.
Yeah.
At TC, a little bit of Cadrona. There was this, I don't think the snow park was set up or whatever that weird.
Snow Farm.
Yeah, that wasn't there yet. Yeah, so long ago. I struggle to remember, but then I went to Canada. So yeah, I was missing the Aussie industry. It kind of bummed
Which
me out.
evolved really quickly, you know,
Yeah.
like that.
There was more happening here. for
Those
sure.
early sort of couple of years, 93, 94 to 95, 96, like a lot of people came and left then sort of thing. And
Yeah,
then that's when guys like Jason Haynes and that really took over sort of thing. And
Yeah.
he was kind of renowned around the world as like the Australian Terrier.
yeah. Well, he was amazing.
Because he had amazing style. He
Yeah.
had some big tricks in that. He had his the first pro model on Hammer snowboards as well. He was
Hammer.
kind of like remember Hammer?
What a brand.
Yeah. But he was kind of like, I guess, one of the first. I mean, Dave Kelly back in the day.
I went
He was
to
actually
school with Dave
he
too.
was World Cup man. He was
Yep.
I think ranked number 6 or 7 on the World Cup for half pipe.
So weird,
we-
the
we had-
crossovers.
We had athletes here, but
Mm.
Jason Haynes was amazing, and he was instrumental. He sort of going back a little bit further, that 93, sort of mid season. Cal Goodman, who had a little shop at the bottom of Thredbo called Shredbo, cool name. He was
Still gets called
bringing in some
Shredbo.
aggression snowboards, and he had special blend. I don't even know if he sold it in any stores, but he had it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he gave me that board there, which I rode for like the second or the back half of that season.
the green one.
The green one, which is actually turquoise blue. I coloured it green. I don't know why.
I was
The
going to
green's-
say the
I don't even
bindings
know why I did that.
where
But,
they've been a very
Look at the
Yeah.
binding setup on that thing. What a monster.
He was my
T-bolts.
first sponsor basically. So halfway through the 93 season, he kind of sponsored me loosely, and but then getting back to Jason Haynes, he quickly then sort of about a year later put me under his wing, but brought me into his company. So he was riding for Ride as well, which is when I started riding for Ride and Quicksilver and Arnett. So they were kind of my next sponsors. I'm missing a lot of boards there
Between these first
between
two.
those two there because
Yeah,
I
right.
used to just sell them probably, but. Like
Yeah.
I just told Al, the guys at Balmoral had a couple turn up a couple of years ago. Like they took shots of them and they still had the original Quicksilver and Arnett stickers on them. And
right.
So they're still circulating. But I didn't keep them because I probably just needed the money or whatever it was. So,
That's funny. The
but yeah,
favorite.
so Jace helped me out a lot. He basically, you know, even though he didn't tell me that he got me those sponsors, he got me those sponsors pretty much. He
Yeah.
told them to sponsor me or whatever it was.
Yeah. So from that point when you did your first season, then came back to Australia, were you then just doing seasons back to back?
Yeah. So Breckenridge for 6 months and 3 to 4 months down here. Yeah.
Yep. And how many countries have you snowboarded in?
Well, it's mainly obviously America, Canada, Japan, and Europe. But Europe's obviously a group of countries, sort of thing.
Yeah,
But
Europe's
I've
quite a few
ridden through. I
countries.
haven't done any of the East Coast of America. I've done most of the West Coast, like Tahoe and all that, quite a bit. Obviously, living in Colorado, you go to Utah quite often as well. Stuff like that. Canada, done a bunch of trips there as well, all in BC. Haven't really gone any further east than that either. And then Europe, we used to do the Quick Cup there every year. That was in France, obviously. And then we take a week or two after that and go other places, Austria as well.
Do you remember everywhere you've ridden?
Not everywhere every time, but kind of most of the year. I mean, I haven't been to Gulmarg or anywhere like that. You know what I mean? So
you have a good idea though. I've actually got like this total haze memory. My memory's shit.
We should really just have a big map on the and just put bloody pinpricks in it.
Every time you go somewhere.
Everywhere, yeah. Well, I used to keep all the trail maps, but I just stopped doing it. Basically.
Yeah, I used to do that too. I had a whole box of paper maps. I don't know where they went. So it's funny what we do. I mean, now I have this attitude with Japan of purposely not remembering things. I'm like, do not remember the name of that mountain because you're bound to say it.
You can't tell anyone then, right?
Yeah,
so.
You're bound to say it. I know exactly where it is. I could get there. I can drive there. If Claire's in the car, I can drive there. She's guiding.
I'm Al's memory.
It might be hard to pronounce out anyway.
Yeah. So I try not to remember them. And that way I don't repeat them downstairs when I'm selling something. And I let them keep going to Hakuba, Niseko, and Nozawa. And that's cool. Everyone should go to those mountains in Japan because they're the ones.
There's nowhere else.
There's nowhere else there.
Whoever told you there's 600 resorts in Japan, there isn't.
No, there's only 3. Three.
Yeah.
It's really getting kind of crazy. You're seeing all those secrets getting given away now.
Yeah.
Sad. Anyway, let's keep going through these boards. So essentially, you're not calling yourself a professional snowboarder at this point. First board.
But then I think like if you'd looked at the few boards after that, there was
it product or money? If there was so many in between.
Cal Gooden was just product, obviously.
Yeah.
I'd say that when I went to ride, the first year or so, there was just product.
Yeah.
And so when I first went to ride, it was Plain Sane and Twist as well. Yeah. When that went to Quicksilver and Arnett and Ride, there was definitely money.
Okay.
But it started off smaller, and then as you do, you build it up every year. Obviously, you go, well, I got this amount of shots in the mag, and this is what I plan to do next year. This is what I want to do. I'm going to need X amount, and then you'll end up probably getting half that, basically, whatever it is, So it's just that negotiation, obviously.
So it's some money. It was not making a living.
It wasn't making a living, but it was definitely sustaining some of the travel for sure.
Yeah.
But I was always working in a kitchen. I discovered way back at the start that I could work in a kitchen in the afternoon and pump out a bit of food, have a few beers, have a free meal, go to sleep, do it all again, whilst looking at the lifties and everyone else working on the mountain every day going, what the fuck would you do that for? Yeah. You can't even ride, sort of thing. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. So
it's funny. I figured I'd done an apprenticeship, right? So I was an electronics technician by trade when I left for New Zealand. So I figured out a way to make money at night by just cleaning the heads on video recorders.
Yeah, right.
And that was how I got, and I would look at the lifties going, it's dumping.
Yeah.
And I used that same skill, cotton bud and a bit of metho, to do the video head cleaning thing for
That's
three years, 3 solid years of making money. And I couldn't understand why all these guys would go to the snow and do a season as a liftie.
I know, yeah.
Or even as an instructor. Luckily,
people do, though. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any lifties.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah, we need the lifties. Hey, keep doing the lifty thing.
Doing a great job, guys.
Keep it up.
Keep it up.
But I just, it was always shocking to me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, but I guess getting in towards the end of
I knew this would happen. We'd go off on tangents.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point, isn't it?
I'm just letting you guys go.
So I guess, so
there was quite a few boards missing.
Quite a few boards there
missing,
and then so that one there though, that was 2001. That was 2001, that board, because I remember riding in the Quick Cup, which was the first year that they put skating back into it. Thank you guys, but we'll get to that soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, tell us that story.
That's kind of where I stuffed up my sponsorship, I reckon, because I was with Quickie and Arnett and Ride, obviously, and everything was going swimmingly, but I was always under Jason's shadow, let's just say. And I thought, you know what, he's always going to be better than me, so what I'm going to do is sort of branch out a little bit, and I'm going to change my sponsorship and try and become my own Jason Haynes, but the head of some of these other brands or whatever. So that's when I swapped to SMP and Smith in 2000, and that's the early 2000, which is when I won that Quick Cup, which is why I should have probably stayed with Quicksilver, because I probably would have been with Quickie forever. So pretty much.
Was that Quick Cup in the late 90s, 2000? When did that Quick Cup start?
That started. So that started in. I'm pretty sure the first one was 94.
Okay.
So that was
Yes. For the Quick Cup, just for those who don't know what that is, can you please
was the Quicksilver Cup.
So basically it was called the Quicksilver Cup, but it was basically a crossover event where you coupled your combined score of surfing and snowboarding together. But so back in the early 90s, it was basically a timed event pretty much. So it was surfing, which was always just surfing, like however that got judged, surfing obviously. But then it was more like a bank slalom type thing.
So almost border crossy.
Well, no, then it morphed into border cross.
Right,
and so back
that's when I
the
first
mid
saw
to
it.
late 90s, it sort of morphed into more border cross events.
Yeah.
Which then morphed into slope style for France and everyone and places like that. Actually, New Zealand as well. I don't think it ever did in Australia. But then that's where it kind of went a little bit more into my wheelhouse because I wasn't that good a racer ever. Like I could go reasonably quick. I didn't do too badly. But when it became more freestyle, that's when I'm like, oh, I've got a better chance here. But all through the 90s, I was getting I was always there and thereabouts. It was like lots of seconds and thirds. Like Luke Fitcher, pretty much. I don't know if you remember that name.
Yeah, I do.
He kind of had a stranglehold on it, man. Like he was so freaking hard to beat. I got seconds and thirds to him and everything, whatever it was. But it wasn't until 2000 that I finally cracked one, basically. So, and it was lucky I cracked that one in 2000 because the year after that, they put skateboarding into it as well in France. But yeah, they were all around the world. We had one in Australia, one in New Zealand, one in France. So those three, they were all Quicksilver actual sponsored events. But there were also ones in California too, like the H2O and stuff, and surfing in Huntington, snowboarding in Big Bear and stuff. So there was like a 3 or 4 or 5 stop kind of tour almost. But
yeah, right.
Amazing event. So my first heat in 94 at Narrabeen, I had Craig Kelly, Brian Iguchi, and Matt Goodwill in my first heat.
Nice.
I was just like, I was just like, oh my God, it's Craig Kelly and Brian Iguchi. And I knew you get Matt Goodwill as well. But
primarily snowboarders though.
Oh, no, totally. And they were blowing up. So I remember them, we could hear them, and I think they were all in the change room or whatever it was getting changed. And they were like, hey, these fucking guys, they bet you they don't even fucking snowboard sort of thing, or whatever it is. And then we went to the mountains, and it was at Thredbo, and then they could see we could ride. So then I think we did better in the overall than they did. But they did better in the snowboarding, obviously. But but that kind of heralded the beginning of the Australian dominance, let's just say. Like the Australians couldn't be beaten for like 10 years almost.
Yeah,
so.
The surfing side of it gave the Australians a huge edge.
And we could ride pretty good, but then when they put skating in it, that pretty much fucked us. Because none of us skated really.
That's a huge ask to have someone who's good at surfing, skating, and snowboarding.
Well, there's not many people that are. But the Californians inherently kind of are, right?
Yeah.
Like the Fletcher brothers, Christian, Nathan Fletcher, guys like that.
Everything.
Yeah.
You look at Danny Way, man. Danny Way couldn't really surf that well, but he can snowboard pretty good. Sean White couldn't surf that well, but God, he can snowboard and skate pretty well. So there's a lot of people who can do two really well. But the Californians, once they put skating in it,
it changed everything.
We couldn't pretty much.
I reckon you could probably ask today's generation to cross over the 3 sports more easily. But back then, because you kind of committed your life to one sport really, and the other one, like you said, you were doing back-to-back seasons. So did surf go by the wayside? Yeah, I mean, for you,
kind of, I suppose, but
not wayside, but like
I think it was already at like a standard of surfing that to take like a week to get back to where you were before you went back. But you find, this is what I find after I come back from snowboarding in Japan for a couple of weeks, my legs are actually really strong. Yeah. Even though my timing, like my surf timing is. Obviously, snowboarding, you're hitting stuff that's like not moving pretty much. The mountain's just there. But in surfing, obviously, the wave's moving the whole time. So that timing, you lose that, but that can come back. It comes back to me in a couple of days.
They're probably harder though, surfing and snow. Like I found snowboarding messed up skateboarding a bit because I had this big wide stance on my snowboard, and I'd get back on a skateboard and it felt tiny.
We've spoken about this.
I had a really hard time with skating after snowboarding for a long time. I couldn't surf for shit, so I would have had the same problem.
Like with skating, like for my first season in Ginny, everyone was skating pretty much. And there were some good skateboarders too. And I'm like, well, I'm going to skate too. But I remember like landing a kickflip, not landing a kickflip, like half flipped.
I was say I'm impressed.
Half flipped and just totally rolled my ankle. I couldn't surf or snowboard for like 4 weeks. And I went, you know what? Why don't you just concentrate on 2, mate? Yeah. You're actually a pretty shit skateboarder, and you know. Yeah. And I'm one of those skateboarders too that I could be rolling down this floor and find the only rock or whatever it is, and just go arse over tit and go, wrist down and snap my wrist. We're not even doing anything, mate.
It's not forever. Look, I don't know any. I'm actually trying to think of someone who was really good at all 3. There was a few guys, but not many. In the history of those sports, there wasn't many.
Not that gets to
really good
competing
skater
levels.
snowboarders, really good surfer snowboarders, and a few good surfer skaters. But all three, that's a big ask.
It's a big ask, but I think that's what made it.
It was an interesting concept.
What made it? It made it, and just even sitting at that table, it was an invite only, obviously, and there'd be 24 competitors. We're all hanging out for a couple of weeks because to get through 3 events, obviously, it's a couple of weeks. But man, you're sitting at a table with, as I said, Danny Way, Sean White's over there, the Fletcher. You would not. In any other comp, you would not get that diverse range of athletes in the same room, So it was really cool. Yeah, cool in that way.
And super iconic period for snowboarding, particularly, and skating, I guess. But the names, like when you hear Danny Way and Craig Kelly and Brian Aguchi, there's arguably no bigger names in either sport to this day.
So, I remember, So that it was hard for me, obviously. So one in 2000, obviously, which was, I think, and I was thinking about on the car on the way here, but that may have been the biggest paycheck that anyone in snowboarding had ever gotten to date, because all the quick cups in Australia were I think first prize was $3,000 pretty much, or whatever it was. And Luke Fitcher, being the man that he was and loved to drink as well, man, he would generally put all that on the bar. Just chuck it on, mate. Yeah. He might have made $1,000 out of it, or whatever it is, sort of thing. The rest went on the bar. When I won, it was actually $25,000 US, sort of thing, and that at that time it was 50 cents to the dollar. It was actually $50,000. I actually won $50K, which I did get rid of quite a lot of it on the way home. And but the next year after that, they put skating into it.
When did you go to France?
Well, that was in France.
Right, the following year.
The 2000?
No, 2000. Yeah, it's all through the 90s. It was in France and Australia and New Zealand.
Right, so you had to go back.
Went back as the defending champion. And unfortunately, they had skateboarding as the first discipline.
So it was the first discipline.
Yeah.
How'd you go?
Which was in a pretty, it was in an indoor, stadium. It wasn't massive, but there was bleachers and everything, and it was a gnarly setup sort of thing. And I'm just looking at it going, I don't know what I'm going to be doing here. I remember Danny Way, I think he was coming back from his 6th or 7th knee reconstructions. He hadn't skated in 9 months at all, right? And we watched him get a fresh deck out and put on his trucks and his wheels and that, put his deck grip on, went out in cab 5, the spine. First thing he did, I'm like, I'm fucked. But it was so heavy because my heat came up, and I think I don't know if it was Danny or it was Sean. It was one of the two. I think it was Sean. I think it might have been Aaron Astorga, who was a good skateboarder, and maybe Omar Hassan as well. I can remember he was always in it too. Great skateboarder, especially Vert and that.
Yeah.
And then there's me, and they're dropping in, Champion 2000, Marcus Stocker. So eyes are on me, and I've just taken the most mellow little trainee, dropped into 2 Tic Tacs and thrown the board away, and just gone. I felt I'm short anyway, but I felt like an inch high. And I'm man. You know what? Get me the fuck out of here. Yeah. This is the worst.
It's
the worst. I felt so shitty.
It's insane that they made you skate.
Well, I could have not dropped in at all, but that would have been even everyone would have gone, what a gutless pussy.
But at the end of the day, if you're not a skater, dropping in is dodgy.
Yeah.
Just doing anything on a skateboard as a non-skater is dangerous. You could have screwed up the rest of you.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. But I had to give it a go, right? So I wasn't going to not drop in, I suppose. But
couple of Tic Tacs.
When did they stop that comp?
So I think they did another 2001, 2002. I think that was the last one. 2002 might have been 2003, but there was at least one more after that. Nathan Fletcher won 2001. Very deserved winner, might I say? Yeah,
Nathan Fletcher. Was he local? He was a local. Was he?
What do you mean? He's Christian Nathan Fletcher, the
the Californian boy.
Oh, yeah.
There was another that was Jamie Fletcher who lived around here. He was a really good skater too.
Yeah. So
anyway.
But one of those guys was always going to win that because they could definitely snowboard, they could definitely surf, and they could definitely skate. They deserve to win, But,
I never thought of those guys as snowboarders, but I guess they were so talented. Those guys,
they could go. Over. They weren't afraid of anything, man. They were going. Even though they didn't have they weren't technically that good. They'd go big, and they were still getting points.
We always talk about all these skater kids that go snowboarding, all our team kids. They always come and borrow all our shit, and they come back and they show us footage, and you're like, holy shit, you've never snowboarded before, and you're hitting that jump at that speed. And they, Portnoy told us a story about remembering us, everyone saying, just make sure you don't hit the knuckles. So they just fucking
go way
launch,
past
man.
you.
Because they're skaters, they have just no fear.
And to them, like snow's like even hard snow is like way softer than concrete.
Yeah, way softer.
And they're not pushing, so they're not like dictating their speed from a push. So they're just going.
Yeah, they can never figure out to like regulate their speed, so they just don't turn.
Yeah,
just pin it into everything and land flat, which is just as bad as landing on the knuckles sometimes. But yeah, they have a little fear of kind of throwing themselves at stuff. So I guess the other two components were more important, skate and surf.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. So board number 3.
Oh, well then.
I love how we can use the boards to go back to
the timeline.
after every
That's kind of
story.
I guess that's my last port of call as far as writing for companies went, I guess, sort of thing. Like I wasn't ready to just give it up yet, I suppose.
What age?
Like so S&P folded basically. Like Eugene King took off for the States. S&P folded. Smith still stayed with me, but I just had to find a new board and outerwear sponsor basically.
Yeah. So Mambo.
So Mambo and Rossi, that was my last 2 or 3
Mambo
years.
outerwear. I can't remember it at all.
Yeah,
it must have never had a big impact.
Nah, they were in a few stores. It was okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I suppose
I'm sure it was fine.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They paid me a bit of money, and I basically bled out the last sort of couple of years with those guys.
So how old were you here? What year is this guy?
Well, so that would have been 2002 to 2004, I guess.
Okay. So you're starting to get on.
Yeah, no, I was getting on because I was already on when I started. I was 21, 22 when I got that board. So you're talking 34.
It's funny when you think about these kids now. They're all little tiny kids when they're getting put on stuff, like little 130 boards and nuts. Yeah, it's wild. Hey?
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have started early. Obviously, I would have loved to have started earlier. I could have gone. Who knows where we might have ended up? But life's not like that.
Well, how far did you go as an athlete in the sport?
Well, I mean, I guess winning the comp in 2000, that was probably the pinnacle for me, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at the longevity of it, though. I was there riding professionally in inverted commas for 12 plus years, which is actually quite a long time. As I said, a lot of other people only lasted a season or two or whatever it was. So I outlasted a lot of people in that respect. And but I think winning the comp, that was something I always knew that I could do. If I hadn't have won the comp, I would have been a little bit bummed that I never got there, I guess. But I think that was probably it. And I think for everyone around me too, they knew that it was something that I should have been able to achieve somewhere along the line. And I was lucky to get it in 2000 because, again, 2001, it became impossible almost after that. So.
Sorry.
You go.
No serious injuries?
Like multiple concussions sort of thing. I broke my collarbone in Colorado 3rd season, I think it was.
Okay.
Literally just switched around to go off a jump switch sort of thing and just caught an edge and went whammo. And
so the usual sort of
but nothing. Injuries. Again, I'm very lucky that I haven't really done. I've extended
no wrists.
Oh mate, I've got to look at my wrist, mate. It's that's not right.
Like, no major injuries. No, just concussions and wrists.
Literally major injuries that have stopped me from snowboarding. No, I've had my share of injuries, but I've been very lucky. The general
public or the general people would say that should stop you.
Yeah, my wrists are cooked, and I never really considered them to be major injuries. Yeah. Weirdly, it's funny, isn't it?
But
I think being short, I mean, again, I know being really quite tall puts a lot of strain on your ligaments and your knees and stuff like that. So I guess the fact that I'm quite compact probably helped as well.
Low center of gravity.
There's been a lot of flat landings and stuff, and I've seemed to just bounce out of them. But,
less to bounce.
I've just become shorter. Compress. I think I was 5'8" when I started snowboarding. I'm 5'6".
Then besides winning the comp, what was like one of your biggest achievements or highlights of your professional career? Like photos or magazines or like...
Did you get a cover?
I've got a cover of a surf magazine. I never got a cover of a snowboard magazine. I got heaps of double page spreads and interviews and this and that, whatever it is. There is one thing that sticks out, and I was going to go and rummage through everything yesterday afternoon and bring a whole bunch of stuff in. I'm like, I don't even know if that's the right thing to do. So if I ever come back, maybe I'll bring some of it in.
Please send us photos and we can drop stuff in.
Okay, yeah, cool. There's
between.
a Quicksilver ad that Quicksilver did. I think it was like 2 of the same attitude was the caption at the bottom. But the top shot was a tail grab and treble cone. Heli, boy.
TC.
I think it might have been Heli out of TC, shot by Tony Harrington. Really good shot. With like lake in the background, sick tail grab, looks pretty big and everything. And then me doing like a grab rail cutty at Lakey Peak, doesn't really matter where it was, but a grab rail cutty at the bottom. So it was a morphed, shared image of me surfing and snowboarding. But that was that became a poster and all sorts of other shit. But that was the best. That's the coolest thing that I had produced, I guess. Yeah. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's a cool highlight. I haven't
Alrighty.
even got a fucking photo. I think I've got like 4 photos of me snowboarding because anyone who took them had to be doing this and then developing it.
Hey, I remember plenty of times doing a shoot or whatever it was, and then literally then going to another town and then going to like putting the film in the films in, and coming back like 4 days later and going, "Do we get it? Do we get it?" And then going, "Didn't get it."
We didn't get it.
Spewing.
Like, you kidding.
I remember I jumped the bloody train tracks at Donna Summit once, man, and
they didn't get it.
Didn't get it. It was overexposed or something. Like, what do you mean? Like,
how are you guys fucking this up? Dude.
But now it's instantaneous. Like, you look at your camera now and you go, got it, or you go, nah, didn't get it, and you just go, and you just keep shooting.
You just shoot the whole thing. Like, they just go, and then shot everything. Like, they're going to find a frame. Whereas back in those days,
crazy.
I had to get it.
I was even thinking at the start, because we've got younger listeners as well that listen to this, and I'm like your story of getting like trapped on the highway, like back then, you guys didn't have mobile phones.
God, no.
Or anything.
There's certainly no GPS in the car. There's all that. There's nothing. It was just
like, for me, I remember when I first started snowboarding.
Had to be able to read a map.
My mobile phones obviously weren't iPhones, so
or a petrol gauge.
It was like
that's right.
If you no petrol, you're in the middle of nowhere. Sorry.
Oh, you didn't have a petrol gauge?
No, there was a gauge. I'm like, why didn't we see that it was going down like hours before?
They should have been able to read the petrol.
Half an hour before, when you said, I hope we don't run out of petrol. You may have checked the gauge.
Did you check the gauge then? It would have been too late then, though, because we're already in the middle of nowhere. Anyway,
he probably was like, I really hope we don't.
But I think like that whole thing. Sorry, just like, spin off. But I think the other reason that I lasted as long as I did is that I had really good, long-lasting relationships. A, with my sponsors, but also B, with the photographers. Because back then it was all about magazines, right? I mean, there's no Instagram and all that. I get all that sort of stuff. There isn't almost any magazines left at all. But it was all about getting shots in the magazines because that was giving your sponsors coverage.
That's what they wanted. That's what
I had friends that just didn't get along with photographers or just didn't get along with the people in the industry, and they just didn't last because they were just a little bit hot-headed. I won't mention their names now, but they struggled. They were good snowboarders and that, but they struggled with their relationships in the industry, and I think that's probably what I was lucky that I had. Guys like Gavin O'Toole, Scott Needham, Backham as well, but also Tony Harrington, mate, Harrow. I shot half the photos I ever got anywhere with Harrow, sort of thing.
Yeah. So was it all photography? Did you ever film a part?
Oh yeah. Like
it's all VHS, like all old school beta cameras.
Yeah, I filmed them when I was with
So
Quickie.
were you more likely to go up with a camera than a video camera?
The cameras just big.
Yeah,
they weren't like portable.
It just depends though. There were film trips though. Like with Quickie, we did. I think one was called Hot Wheels. I can go and grab them too. I've got copies of them as well. But yeah, they one of them, Hot Wheels is Utah, I think we went and filmed there. Went up to Canada once with Quickie as well. I remember this funny trip, man. Went to Revelstoke, and there was like guys like Scott Newsom there and like hardcore Canadian freeride guys basically, and we're all getting ready up in this like room and whatever it was, and the Canadian guys were like, hey, yeah, so like, I got a 165 and a 170 and whatever it is and blah blah. And what have you got there? And I had
147.
I had two 147s. They're like, what the fuck are you going to do with that? I'm like, don't worry, mate, I'll get a shot. And they were working. So Hainsey was there too. I remember, and they were working him, man. They were like, oh yeah, we hear you're the Terrier of Australia. So they were giving him shit. And then he went out and bloody blew their minds. He went out and did some really cool shit.
Yeah. It was crazy.
I remember sitting in that room, man, and the guys with the big boards, and they weren't that much bigger than me. They were just riding bigger boards. And here's me, not with one 147, but two of them. Probably needed one on each foot, but anyway.
You're probably the perfect person to ask this question to. Back then, in your time period of being professional to like now kids coming up and trying to achieve that, like what's the difference in what is expected of the rider from back then to now? Like you talk about cover photos and like interviews in magazines and photos, and it's like there's barely any
that
magazines
doesn't really exist
now.
anymore.
And like if you get like a post on Instagram, like that's not really worth
kind
much.
It comes and goes, like it's gone. Like
attention span, right?
You know, I mean, that post can be up there for what? That could be the first post, whatever, for what, a few seconds until it gets superseded or whatever it is. But hey, way harder now. I mean, it's such a quantum shift to like when we had nothing, we had no coaching, we had no money. When now, I mean, I'm watching parents dumping hundreds of thousands of dollars into their kids, coaching them all around the world, whatever it is, with just and like airbags, but there's actually no money to be like. No, I hope the kids love snowboarding because there's not really much way to recoup any of that money. I think a lot of them are just living vicariously through their kids. That's fine. That's totally fine. But you want to hope that those kids really love snowboarding because there ain't no money in it at the end of the day unless you're Val or you're Scotty James or whatever or someone like that, and you've got international contracts.
Yeah,
mate, you look at even international riders, mate. A lot of them have been cut too since the whole Liberated thing happened. A lot of our riders, like long-time Roxy, DC, Quicksilver riders, got cut, and they're good riders and internationally great riders. And the money just doing it. It's kind of dwindling.
So back then, through when you were getting sponsored, what was the expectation from your sponsors for you to deliver?
Well, there was like comps for sure. Like comps are one thing because you get seen, obviously. Winning a comp or whatever it is, but I quickly realized that winning a comp was, well, yeah, you've got a first place in a magazine, it might say first place, or you might get a shot in a thing if you're doing the trick, but really if you get a shot in a mag or a cover or whatever it might be, it sort of lasts a lot longer, and it's something you could bring into your sponsors and go, hey man, that's a double page. Like if you were to pay that magazine for that double page, that's $2,000 or whatever it is. I go, well, that's worth $5. So we had photo incentives. That was the thing. So getting photos and mags was everything because we'd have usually a retainer of whatever it was, a little bit of travel money, say $2,000 per sponsor or whatever it was, and then a list of photo incentives. And like a cover was worth $1,000 or something, a double page was worth $500, and so you could rack up your money kind of thing by getting photos. So that would become generally your number one. You know,
I think there's this like little misconception with the kids too. Like today, when you talk to the kids, they don't quite understand. We would hang out for those magazines to hit the shelves, and you'd go through that thing probably 50 times. Like you'd just every photo in it, you'd be like, oh, I wonder how I did that. That was how you compared yourself to
and like
what was going on. It was crazy.
We've kind of done that with our team riders where we give them photo incentives for mags, but then we also give them Instagram incentives. So if they're like, if they get on this thing or if they're on ours or if they're on this, so we give them like social media, like photo incentives and also magazine incentives for our skate team.
That's more important to us now.
Yeah, to support their career. But like now from a brand point of view, what's expected of a sponsored rider?
I guess it's kind of a tough question. Is if you take away the magazines, which aren't there anymore, I guess you hit the nail on the head. It's posts, it's Instagram posts because
followers.
Well, there's really not even videos, and I mean there's video crew. Like we're now sponsoring the Medium crew as well, which are sort of an up and coming jib based crew sort of thing. You know, like there's these new crews that are coming out, which is awesome. Like people are putting time and effort into filming parts and that, which is cool. But a lot of those movies they put out are still only like 12 to 15 minutes long. They're not like what I'd call a full-length movie
it's
sort of
attention span thing, right?
That's the attention span.
Like no one wants these days, full-length
it's
stuff.
10 to 15 seconds, mate, and you're done.
Yeah.
Kind of thing,
so it's kind of like it's kind of like this podcast, right? You've got a situation where very few people are really watching it. It's being listened to. And I think that's because people have the time in the day to sit in a car. A lot of people are driving a lot or whatever, or can just chuck headphones in at work and can listen to a podcast, but the views aren't very high.
Yeah.
So it's that attention span. I watch them back, which is a struggle listening to yourself talk. It's horrible. But you watch them back and you're like, man, I don't know how many people would sit through 3 idiots sitting down having a gibber. They can just listen. They don't need to watch. So people's attention spans got so short. I don't know if I'd watch a 45-minute long snowboarding movie anymore. Like I'm going to go, oh, I've seen it all. And skateboarding's the same. It's really hard to sit down and watch a 45-minute or hour-long thing like the old days. Whereas back then, that's all we had.
Yeah.
I think also snowboarding movies have changed a bit too. Like there's obviously like my writing's changed too. So like I can now watch the Art of Flight style where there's some things in that where I
that for days.
Yes.
Where you go,
epic,
that looks amazing. And like there's some movies today where you watch and they're writing powder and it's amazing. They're hitting things and you're like, fuck yeah. But for like the general public, they're like, well, that's so far advanced.
Stuff?
No. The like what they're hitting and like
the rails and the
like not
jumps
the not
and...
like just like Art of Flight style. You're that's so out of the realm of normal that I can't relate
you need
to
a
it.
Helicopter.
Whereas like my Special Blend and like all those like and Forum and all those like movies were the first movies that I got into skateboarding where it was all like snowboarding and they're all like full gangster. They're all just mucking around and half of the videos them drinking in the van and like fucking around and that's like I want to be on that.
Relate to it. It's the old Bones Brigade theory, right? The first Bones Brigade movie was a bunch of dudes skating around the street. And they'd find a ramp in a backyard and they'd skate it. That's exactly what we were doing. They were doing it way better, but that's exactly what we were doing. Now it's helicopters and global, like it's so not achievable for most kids particularly. Yeah. Like it's a very different time and things have changed so much with snowboarding.
And you're like, wow, look at what can be done. But you're like, I'll never be able to do that.
Or afford to do it,
let alone do it.
I love going back and watching. I've been doing it for years, obviously, but I've been, especially in the last couple of years, going and watching a lot of the old videos, something that I started off with even before I started, sort of stuff in like 89 and 90 and that. But then if you go to like some of the like the TB series, like TB 4 or 5, and have a look at the writing, man, it was pretty freaking good, man.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's more technical now, and yes, there's guys doing 2100s and whatever it is, but guys were doing 10, like massive 10s and stuff back then. The writing, I think, back then was so much, every year was so much better than the last year that every year you'd watch the video and go, oh, that's way better than last year. Now it's kind of just plateaued and you're like, well, it's just still sick, but
it's hard to tell quantum leaps, if there's another half rotation, right? It's got to the point where
past three, it's what are you going to slow it down and start?
You literally have to pause it.
We were doing that video the other day and we had to watch it 5 times. I was like, no, he was doing the Mick Twist or whatever. It's like, he was doing this and then doing that. And I was like, no, he's doing this and that. And I'm like, no, it's not.
The triple, like you mean Yumi doing the triple in the half pipe.
Like, what the fuck?
Sick, isn't it, though?
But yeah, it's sick. It's sick, but what?
We had to rewatch it so many times.
I'm just trying to get.
Can you imagine? Like, that's 3 flips in a 22-foot high.
It's nuts.
Ice tube, basically.
Concrete. It's as hard as concrete.
Honestly, you hit the deck on that, you're going to snap yourself in half. It's so consequential. Like
best case scenario, ruptured spleen.
Oh,
like you're in big trouble if you slam on that. It's crazy what they're doing. But there is a point where it does get, like, I'd rather watch those old videos where someone does like some 40-foot method air as opposed to these spins off. Yeah. I don't know what's going on with the spin. Some of it doesn't even look right anymore because it's off axis and it's just too...
It's progress, Al.
It is, I get it.
It is. It's like they're doing like...
They're not riding boards like we were riding.
Whether we can understand exactly what they're doing or not, what they're doing is technically so freaking hard.
Yeah.
I almost just don't want to understand it because I'm like, I'll never get there sort of thing. But
I don't want to. Do you want to get there?
No, I don't.
I have no interest
in
spinning 400 times and dying. Well, I just want to ride powder. That's really what I want to do.
We're old, mate.
Yeah, I guess.
But young kids want to do that.
Kids, do your 2180s, 2160, whatever we're up to.
And leave the powder to us.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Out of the trees.
I remember like years ago, I think it was at the Cruiser maybe at Thredbo, and they had a little rail park just underneath there, the Cruiser Park or whatever it was, and it was a pow day, it was a good pow day, and I was like sitting on the chair, and there was like these 4 or 5 guys hiking this rail, all right, and I'm just like, what the and I'm like, hang on, they're hiking a rail. And they're not riding the powder.
Perfect.
Shut the hell up. Let them go, mate. Let them go. If they hike that rail all day, that's another 50,000 less tracks that are up there. So it was like, mate, hike the rail, guys. But
100%. We were in Japan last year with the Modest guys. That day, there was a day at Cortina, right? It was fucking puking. Bottomless. proper bottomless day. The best day you could possibly have at Cortina. Half the models team were bummed because they wanted to go ride a rail.
We saw them that morning. They did a few laps in the morning, and then by like lunchtime, we met up with Freddie, and they were like, "We're going to go."
They don't want to ride here anymore. I'm like, dude, it's epic out there.
Yeah. Like midday, they're
Freddie
like,
he mentioned that day to me,
and it's filling in, right?
Yeah.
We're like, we can have lunch. Let's stop for lunch because it's filling in. Yeah. It'll just be better when we go back out. Yeah. They were all like, we want to
called it at lunch, and they all went and rode the village.
Some street,
each their own. It's just it's horses for courses.
Yeah, so. I get it. I just don't get it. Yeah, if you know, I get it because there's endless days where you can ride rail. There's not endless powder days. Right. They're few and far between. Like
playing devil's advocate,
deep days.
Like on those days, there's enough snow to like build up around a rail that you probably wouldn't be able to ride on another day.
No, I'm not buying
it. I'm trying to like maybe give a reason.
Powder doesn't make a good jump anyway, right?
No.
So if anything, it's buried the rail. That's a bummer. Kind of, you know?
So, no, I don't buy it.
I think that's like, you're talking about powder. Like that's why Japan quickly became so special to me.
When did you first go to Japan?
So I think my first trip, I'm pretty sure, was 99.
Right.
With Pete Murphy.
Yeah. Who now has half the property in Japan.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, so I think it was like a promo trip for him. So he took us. He took, I think, 2 or 3 of us over there. Yeah. We stayed in his house, mate. There was nothing there. There was one little restaurant.
I was a year
like
ahead
a couple of little log cabins or whatever. Yeah. But there was a guy called Trev Ponting there.
Where did you
Trev
go?
Ponting?
No. Where did you go in Japan?
No, it was in Niseko.
Niseko.
Yeah.
So it had like 10 lifts, right?
Yeah.
8 or 10 lifts.
Yep. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
And there was one New Zealander guy, Trev Ponting, rest in peace. He passed away.
Don't remember.
A few years back from brain cancer, but he was basically our guide there. But there was like us Australians and Pete Murphy and a couple of guys at the house.
Yeah.
And Trev Ponting from New Zealand, and that was it, man. There was no one else there. There was no infrastructure. There was no one else riding. I was like, this place is freaking insane. Like, we'd hike the peak all day. There was no one.
This is in Niseko.
Yeah.
I
that was 99. I went back maybe 3 or 4 years later. I was like, ooh, a bit going on here.
It started to.
Yeah, there was a few buildings, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. They were still sick.
Mate, we should have been buying everything.
And then went back like maybe 7 or 8 years after that. I started guiding for White Room tours.
Right.
And so I did 2 tours in Niseko, and so I did like one, and then I did another one, and the end of that, when I did that other one, I was like, oh my God, man, like this place, like it's lost the plot. This isn't Japan for me anymore. So but luckily they were already doing tours in Furano. Yeah. So then that's when I started going to Furano. I did Furano for like, it's crap, don't worry. No, Furano's already gone anyway. I'm not worried about it. Furano's already kind of gone.
There's some really good spots around.
I didn't think 13 odd years ago to Furano. Oh, yeah. Not every year, but like.
I was going to ask, have you gone to Japan every year since then, or?
There's been trips to Canada, a trip to the States, a trip to Europe, but almost every year to Canada. Like if I've got 2 weeks to go ride, I'm going to Japan if I can.
Yeah. It's crazy. We went back. I hadn't been to Niseko for 20 years.
And it was the day that we went.
I went back with Claire, and I was like, holy
We didn't ride.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to have a look.
He was craving a coffee.
I needed a fucking coffee.
That's a perfect place to go.
I was like, let's drive
go to Australia.
30 minutes to Niseko to get an almond flat white.
We were staying at Resort, so it wasn't a deep day. It was just a normal sunny day. So like, fuck it, let's drive to Niseko. I'll get a coffee. I was like, what the hell has happened here?
So I did a similar thing. We went to Awani this year, which is just a little coastal town, a little resort just on the coast. Anyway, we had a car. We were like, well, you know what? We're close enough. Let's just go and have a look at Kuchan, and just drove through Niseko. And I couldn't believe I have never seen anything. I mean, it looked like freaking Whistler, mate.
Yeah, it is.
Hanazono has got like a 2-lane highway in and out now, and
blew my mind.
$2,000 a night, like room hotels. Oh my God, I can't believe it.
I feel like there's more Western restaurants or like normal food restaurants than there is Japanese. Like there's kebab shops in the middle of Niseko.
That's fine because it caters to all those people. Let them go. If you got a lot of money and you want to stay in a big fancy hotel right on the mountain there and ride tracked out snow by 9:30, then that place is for you. Niseko great.
And you can drink beers and.
It doesn't make it.
Get a kebab on the walk home.
Get a kebab on the way home.
Apparently this Christmas, it was a zoo. I've been told by a lot of people who've come back from there in the store. They're like, it was insane. There
Like
were
the
so many
like
people
stuff.
there.
Can't get
Yeah, like
even last year, the year
standing like
before,
Whistler style.
when we went into Nisiko to get food or something like that, you had to make reservations everywhere.
Yeah, we
And there's a fair amount of infrastructure there too. Just they keep building more than what they can keep catering for.
We stayed at resorts and there was just nothing. There's nothing much
eat.
there. So we were driving in to get dinner.
And
we
other
had to book
places and stuff.
I
every night.
heard you had to book Kuchan this year. I heard Kuchan was hard to
Really?
get into. Yep, that's what I heard. Like in the peak season. Like
That's
peak.
wild.
We didn't book, but we were going to like the
Middle
little
of-
Japanese restaurants that like were like,
They
yeah,
wouldn't
okay, you're
take
2
bookings.
people suite, we can
Yeah,
fit you in.
yeah.
But like everywhere else was booked.
It was nuts. Yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, Hakuba, I was more a Hakuba guy because that's where I found it first, I guess. I went there first. And the way it's blown up now too with the Epic Pass, and I won't go back there. I just, no interest. We went last year, was it last year? We went for a few days. We had that Cortina day, but we bailed out pretty quick.
We did 5 days just to like
to
get our
pass.
legs
Get your
and
feet
get
May as well
feet.
use the
use your
thing.
pass.
And it was to get our legs, so because we had a month, so we were going to use that to get some sort of. But it's still great. The snow's great. We were actually not having too much trouble getting away from people because I know
You know where to go.
I know little, like
and like
where to go under
and
a
it's
rope.
like it's a group of like whatever it is, 7 or 8 resort. It's there's a lot.
There's
there.
there's plenty
a
of
lot there.
places.
and
I
there's
also know where to
you
duck
know
away.
like weather and timing too. Like we had a day at Cortina where it was like bluebird.
Fucking stupid.
Power.
People are so stupid. It snowed the whole day before, right? And we were there.
They
and we
closed
watched
the lift at
They
4.
shut the lift at 4.
Mhm.
It snowed till fucking 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
all
was
filled
like,
in.
no one's going to go there tomorrow, Claire. You watch. They think it's not snowing. They're not going to go. We went there. There was nobody there.
Yeah.
Bluebird powder day. Me,
Yeah.
Claire, and Cam from Melbourne.
Snowboarding.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Cam was like, I don't know about like, should we maybe
I'm
go
like,
somewhere
bro,
else? And we're like,
trust me.
no,
Yeah.
we're going to
Yeah.
Cortina.
Trust me. It's not. They won't. They don't go there if it's
Yeah.
not snowing, and it'll be epic today. And it was fucking amazing.
And then there's that other like secret spot that that we left till the afternoon. So we were having deep, like waist deep freshies at 4 p.m.
I'm not going to
So
say.
good.
I won't say on here, but there's a secret spot at Cortina that is so blows my fucking mind that no one's found it.
Because it's not that hard to see. Well, it's not that hard to find.
Right,
but it's just there.
if I showed you on a map, you'd be like, "What are you?" There's
you talking
no
about?
way that's not tracked out. They just
Yeah.
there's just a little sneaky way to get in.
It's a
I mean,
little,
that's the
it's a
beauty of
little
Japan,
gully
though,
so
right?
that if you don't know what you're doing, you could get
Well, yeah,
stuck.
you'd get stuck. I mean, you could go on the wrong side of it and you'd fucking have an hour walkout. But
But you know what? I'd take the hour walk. If it was waist deep and it was a sick run, I'd take an hour walk.
yeah, sometimes
You know,
I will too.
I wouldn't
I mean,
I wouldn't choose
I don't
it,
love
but-
an hour walkout.
No.
You'll bitch and fucking moan about it. You won't take
I'll
it.
bitch, I'll
you won't
love
be like,
getting
oh,
there,
thank
and then I'll
God we
complain
did
the
that.
whole way out. Yeah, that's my thing. I'll just bitch and moan the whole way out. I'll be like,
So I would try
I
to
think we
avoid
know, like,
those
that Japan's
situations.
still got
oh, there's
so much to
Yeah.
be discovered. And look, I mean, even the places that are becoming discovered places now, there's still another whole load of more. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's 600.
Whether it's Hokkaido or Honshu, it doesn't really matter. There's the whole place
plenty.
is covered in snow
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
3 months of the year, and
Yeah.
most of it's still untapped.
Yeah.
Untapped, you know? Like,
They won't. The Australians will venture out, but they will always want to be able to get Western food. And
yeah.
They're just like, I mean, you got to understand.
It
what the
happened to
market is.
us by the end of the month. We were like, oh,
mate,
just give
I
us
was
a
that
salad.
fucking
Yeah.
sick of.
Well, that's, you don't get veggies. It's
I
hard
was
to get
that
veggies
sick of
over
the
there.
food by a month.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I need to eat
Like a
something
month
healthy.
Was like the
It's
tipping
raw.
point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
for like 2 people who normally are vegan.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
fucked. We're
Yes,
just,
I can see that.
Yeah.
Maybe a problem there.
we're
Chancellor.
instantly not vegan. The moment you land, you're like, I'm eating
Yeah, it's
Pork-
like
whatever I can.
Yeah.
pork broth. It's
Yeah.
the
I
fucking
just
main ingredient.
immerse yourself in the
Yeah,
culture.
you're an
Yeah.
idiot to stay. Like anyone who's a vegan, we've said this on this before. If you want to be a vegan and go and scratch around looking for food in Japan, feel free.
Feel free.
I'm not doing it.
You're going to
I'm-
be starving.
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much
you'll
the
be
whole
starving
time.
by day 3.
Yeah.
Like literally, we'll be dropping weight by day 3 because they don't do vegan. They don't even know.
You'll
what
be
it
eating
is.
hot chips.
Yeah, hot chips. With
Hot
chicken
chips and
salt.
edamame.
All right, back to the boards. Blue board.
Oh, Bluebird, yeah. So,
So not
we're sort
covered
of
in
going, I guess
sponsorship.
we're going to, yeah. Well, I guess there's a bit of a leap there where I've gone, okay, like my snowboarding career as it was, probably getting a bit old in the tooth, you know. Like
Yep.
I've done a bit of that. I've let it out for 12 odd years, and probably need to start looking at my next sort of part of my life. And as I said, I'd always worked in bakeries at a younger age, but then I was always working in kitchens in between, actually when I was doing seasons, but also when I was in Sydney or whenever it was in between seasons, I was actually working a couple of pretty good restaurants, like Freshwater down here at Freshwater. Funny enough, it's called Piloo now, but it's called the Freshwater before. Anyway, learned like some pretty good skills, and anyway, so I was a pretty good chef. And so I got offered a job. A friend of my brother's was opening a restaurant up at Salt, up near Casuarina, near Cabarita sort of thing.
Yeah,
and offered me the head chef position up there, and I was like, well, that's a pretty good offer. I think it was like 80 grand or something like that.
What year are we?
So we're looking at 2004 now, pretty much, something around there, I guess.
A lot of money for back then.
Yeah, it was good money. But then, I was just starting to think to myself, well, that's good money and everything, but like, how am I going to go snowboarding from there? It's a long drive down to Gindy from there, sort of thing. And so, there was a job going at ESS because they were opening a new store in Gindy, sort of thing, and I made a decision for like, probably a quarter of the money, maybe. It was bugger all basically. But I was staying somewhere where I could go snowboarding, 3 months of the year, and then I'd see what would happen after that, sort of thing.
So you picked a lifestyle over a job, like over money.
Over money, yep, definitely. Yeah,
I think we all.
I couldn't see myself
living
away from snowboarding, and even though I was on the beach up there, I couldn't see myself living that far from snowboarding for that amount of time. So
right.
Plus, I knew like a head chef of restaurants, it's a bitch of a job
pressure.
a lot of time. I was like, it'll be good. It's good money, but it's also just going to be a lot of work.
Heavy work, right? Anyway, high pressure.
Yeah. So I started working at ESS. So I was working under a guy called Billy Reynolds. He was the manager, but he unfortunately took his life in 2005, I think it was. But really sad. Like he had no real reason to do it. But anyway, that made me the manager there. So through here, I suppose you're looking at running the shop in Gindy and basically still getting product.
So you're getting these products through the shop or through your?
Well, no, they're through they're basically getting given to me through the
same way we get boards.
Yeah, like I was still doing like some filming for Thredbo, like all their on Thursday we'd film for all their weather for the feeds and stuff they do for the week and whatever.
Yeah.
But basically, because I was churning through all their stock for them in the shop, whether it's it was 3CS and Sapient and stuff like that, and whatever it was. I was still getting flowed some free stuff. So.
Academy, Sapient, so only one of those three is still around.
Yep.
Crazy,
so that was it. I think that was the original. Yes, I think that's kind of like the basic now. But the reason I brought that is because that's like I'd ridden some of the Mervyn boards that were bananas. So like obviously banana in between your feet, whatever you want to call it, rocket between your feet and the flat underfoot. But for me, they were a little bit washy sort of thing. Like I was so used to this sort of stuff, and I was like, I can see how it'd be good for like jibbing around a bit and whatever, but it's just not enough for me. But that board there was the first one. You have a look at it now. It's pretty flat through the middle, but it's basically like an early rise tip in the tail.
Really little micro.
That's a 48, that one there. And I actually took that to New Zealand. I was still doing white room tours and on a heli trip basically, and took that heliboarding. Like it went good at Thredbo and everything, but I'm like, can't go good heli. Took that heliboarding, mate, and it went fine, mate, in deeper snow as well.
What do you weigh?
I weigh more now. So back in these days here, I was probably about 65, 67. Okay. I probably went up to about 70 around about here-ish, and I'm probably about 74 now.
Okay.
So,
right.
But that board, that 48 there, that blew my mind, and that's where I'm like, I can actually ride something with rocker on the tip and the tail.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, but still with some camber on it, which is when I get to like the rider's choice or then to the headspace and stuff like that. But that's kind of where it all goes from.
And then you started work. So that was Balmoral. You were working Balmoral?
ESS.
No,
there is a sticker down there, isn't there?
There's a Balmoral sticker down there. Flip it up.
I can't
on the
see
tail.
it.
We should have given them an
ad.
But
so I did ESS for 4 years, which is
friendly ad.
When I told you,
sponsored by Balmoral. So this podcast.
I did. Like I told you the story of me losing my mind there at the lake and building like little points, which is when I got to get out of Gindy. And I love Ginny in wintertime and that, but just during the summer period, it was the same people, the same stories. It was just a little bit, a little bit. I was like, I got to get out of here. So then, came up to Sydney and got a job at Balmoral at Mossman there, and did a year and a half there. And then that's when. So back then, Mervyn was actually owned. So Libtech Canoe and Bent Metal and whatever was actually owned by Quicksilver.
Right.
So basically, Basically, yeah. So Quicksilver then became the distributor. So no, they sold it then. It was actually already sold, but they became the distributor for it. And that's what then gave them enough product that they're selling to then warrant them to have snow-specific reps. Because before then, Quicksilver Roxy and DC were just being sold by surf reps. And so it was just chugging along, and it was in half the surf shops and whatever it was, blah, blah, blah. And that's when Jeff Sweeney, who I knew through the days when I was at Quickie, so it was kind of like, for me, it was like coming home almost. Like, I knew a lot of the crew that was still there. Most of them are kind of gone now. But a lot of the crew that I had met back when I was sponsored by them were actually still working there. So it felt a bit like coming home.
So what year did you start working for Quickie?
That was 13 years ago now, I'm pretty sure. I mean, it was my 14th year or my 13th year. I think it's
2011,
my 14th
2012,
year.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. 2010.
Yeah, 2010 I think it was. Yeah.
And then you found LibTech boards.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Gnu,
well, I rode Gnu's. I
Gnu
rode the Rider's Choice for quite a while. And then
Mervyn boards.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then you've obviously ridden nothing but Mervyn boards since.
But I've struggled with the Mervyn boards because a lot of them are too wide. I've got a Ferry's foot. I've got a size 7 men's foot.
Yeah.
So a lot of the boards in my size are actually too wide. So I'm always searching for narrow boards, basically.
Right.
But that's why.
So how are you riding that Orca? What size is that Orca?
So that Orca's a 47. That's still 257 wide though.
Yeah, right.
Which is it's too wide for me. But I mean, in deep snow, it doesn't really matter.
No, it's good.
Go out in the groomers. It does feel like I'm riding a bit of a bathtub sort of thing. But that's why I like that lib rig, which I took down to. Yeah, so that's 251 and a 53.
Yeah, it's almost normal.
Yeah. So I had like a 20 centimeter day because we'll have our second year of that. This year we just had was our first year with the Austin Sweeten lib rig. 1099 RRP. Find it at your best shops. But yeah, and I took it up to Parachute. We were Guthrie on like a 20 centimeter day at the start of the season. Probably one of the only powder days we had. Yeah. And it went sick, man. I'm like, man, it's just the way the nose rolled into the side cut and everything. I'm like, this is going to be a really good board, but is it going to have the float for like deep Japan? So I took the Orca and the lib rig to Japan this year, and I never touched the Orca.
Really?
No, didn't even put it on once.
Okay.
So the amount of float I was getting out of that and the narrowness was like, that was just a godsend for me.
Small foot, definitely the way to go. Because the Orcas are exceptionally wide. I've got a 5'3" and I'm a 9.5, and I struggle a little bit.
Well, the 5'3" is like 263, I think.
It's massive.
Yeah.
It's fucking massive. It's like the width of a board that would be normally a 165. It's
but that's the premise to it,
volume,
though,
right?
It's volume.
And
it's
in
volume
the powder,
down
it's the best board you could ride. Yeah. But on the hard pack, you notice that you're trying to move.
So they're making the smaller Orcas now much narrower because they're working out that the smaller size, which were kind of like the 3/8 and that and whatever 4/4s were meant for women, are just too wide for women in general.
Well,
so
most women's feet would fit on that.
Yeah.
Like fit on it.
Yeah.
No overhang at all. It's insane.
Yeah. So
yeah, right. So there you go.
We'll have to get you on to do a full board rundown.
Yeah, well, the new ones are here soon. So
PK time.
I think we've got half the boards are actually I think they're in the warehouse. Like there's like half the deliveries here, I think, this week.
Yeah, cool.
The other half are like a week or two behind something. So
we'll set up so that we're an audience and you can be our professor.
Oh, yeah.
LibTech
Professor of Boardology.
Professor of Boardology.
Yeah, so you kind of did the natural route of like working on the shop floor and in shops and then transitioned into rep.
Yep. It just all happened. It just all happened that way, I suppose. And working in a shop was fine. I was doing the guiding then at the shops as well, which is cool. That got me my free trip every year sort of thing or whatever it was. And then obviously working in Ginny kept me in the season as well. That kept me snowboarding, at Thredbo as much as I could, which was great.
I think that like becoming a rep from your background for us, like for me as a shop owner, the way like when you meet someone who just knows their shit and they're not coming at you from a salesman only point of view, they're like, man, this is a really good product. And you can kind of
likewise,
sift through the bullshit.
If I didn't like it, I would actually tell you that as well. I go, you know what, this actually isn't a good product. Because I'm pretty transparent that way.
I think that
I'm lucky that the brands that I do, the products are pretty solid from start to finish.
Yeah. So
just on that, if I had to just sell black gloves, I just wouldn't be able to do it.
No.
Because it's just another black glove. I'd be going, hey, it's another black glove. It's $59. You want to buy a box of them? No, okay, I'm out the door then. I wouldn't be able to.
Black glove is a higher price point.
It's selling apples, right? You just start to get, it's an apple.
So,
what do you expect?
So, but like to that point though, like I feel like most of you guys that I deal with, or if not all actually, are actually my friends kind of thing. Like I feel like me going, a day's work for me it doesn't feel like work most of the time. Yeah.
Well, that's,
there's like, right. I feel like I'm dealing with my friends and talking about snow. I'm like, well, that's just what I do on a normal day.
Anyway,
kind of thing.
We were having a conversation about like reps and like just personalities the other day. And it's like, there's some that you just come in and we end up just in a conversation about.
Yeah, and you'll blow like an hour and a half and do no business whatsoever.
You become mates. At the end of the day, like, mate, state of origin time. God.
Yeah, that's all we need to talk about. Yeah.
Phones are blowing up.
Yeah.
We just need to get you two and Dan on a podcast.
At State of Origin time. Yeah. That'll be good. We'll do one each week. The week
and
before.
Liv. Can we have Liv in?
Mate, little Liv Lovelace is downstairs and she's a South supporter. Oh. And she's a hardcore South supporter.
It's like the moment you mention footy, she goes, oh!
You just see it. Oh, God.
Elias is gone too.
Yeah.
So that's pretty heavy as well. So
yeah.
But so it's just all a really friendly kind of, I don't know, it just all feels kind of right.
You have good reps and bad reps, but the ones that are good, like I would rather deal with a company where I get on with the people I'm dealing with. As long as the product's good, I will not sell a product based purely on a rep. Like it won't happen. Yeah. But if that combination happens where you've got the personality, the product, everything feels good, it's worth persisting with through thick and thin, I mean, we met I think I started doing GNU. I can't remember. Then the DC shit went down.
But when I first came into here to even talk to you about GNU or whatever it was, I reckon I knew your face, man.
For sure.
Well, I knew we'd run into each other before.
100%.
Sure.
I've been doing this for 20
years. It's because I've been living here, like I've been living away from here for 7 or 8 years now, but I lived here on and off for like 25 years. Yeah. DY, Curl, Narrabeen.
Yeah. Well, I've always lived here.
Just from the history of you guys,
there's
it feels like you guys were like...
Yeah, we kind of like...
doing the same thing,
even though we were living in the
same
area on and off, we were actually doing polar opposite things. Sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was just throwing beer cans at you at the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Throwing beer cans at the 97. Yeah, I had this conversation with Andy Derrick, who's the Etnies ES rep. We talk all the time about all these people we grew up with. And I'm like, but I wasn't here. I know everyone you're talking about, and they know me, and everyone knows everyone. But I just missed him.
Just weren't in that
somehow
zone.
Missed him. Yeah, and it's super weird because I did spend so much time just traveling and doing it differently to everyone else. But I never got good enough either. When I knew that I would never make it as a snowboarder, I think it was 1993 or 4. I was in New Zealand for another season, and a guy called Russell Winfield came out.
I know who you mean.
With the ride team.
He's one of the only dark skinned snowboarders back in the day.
American snowboarder.
He was
a hilarious dude.
Yeah, he was a ride,
He came over and we had been riding this one part of this bloody part of Wanaka. Not Wanaka, was it? I don't know, one of the mountains around Queenstown somewhere. Wanaka or Queenstown. And we'd been trying this one trick. It was like this little rail. I was like trying to do a 360 into a board slide. Anyway, he came along and did a fucking 7 into the same trick, and I almost like unstrapped there and then and threw my board on the strap. I'm like, I'm
hang
done.
up your boots.
Yeah, what am I even doing? Like, there's no way I'm never going to be in this league. I can't. He was doing shit on that little promo trip or whatever they were doing, filming trip. I was like, I'm out, man.
And he never really, in all honesty, he never really amounted to much either. You know what I mean?
No. So he was nowhere near the top.
He's still around, obviously, and whatever. And like a lot of those old guys are, like Peter Line, and and a lot of them are quite eccentric, and some of them have lost their marbles, sort of thing. But
absolutely.
But even guys like, he was quite famous, obviously.
Yeah. Well, he's getting paid to go on trips.
That's right. Yeah. So it's not easy. It wasn't easy. Nah. It's still not easy. It's even harder now.
No, you had to be really good. Like the level, I just saw myself and went, okay, that was the day I went, how do I stay in snowboarding now that I know I can't ever be a pro rider? how do I do this? Like, what's step 2? And that was when I started thinking about a shop. That's when all that Dan Graham, like we were on chairlifts thinking about, okay, there's other avenues. Let's figure it out. And within 2 years, we had Boarders. So we knew that, okay, well, if we get Boarders and we'll still get free snowboards.
Yeah, that's... Well,
and we'll still we'll still get gear and we'll still be able to
Again, it's not about, not necessarily about money. It was more about...
supporting the addiction.
Well, yeah, totally.
I'm still
because getting a free board still like, or a free anything still feels good, man. Like,
I love it.
They're my demos and that, but I still order myself 1 or 2 every year. And when they come, I'm like, oh, it's a new board. Like, I'm like, oh, sick, man.
Still like
wax it up, sort of thing, and like it's like back then almost. Sort of. It hasn't really changed that much.
You get that Christmas morning,
except
feeling.
I'm sponsoring myself now.
That's me too. Right? I'm sponsoring myself. The trips cost me a fortune, but they're still worth it. I love it. This year's the first year in a long time where we didn't do Japan, and I'm like beside myself at the moment. I'm really struggling because I know this winter's going to be tough because we have no staff, so I'm going to have to work a lot.
And I can't snowboard until...
God, yeah. How's your recovery's going? Good though?
Slowly, but good. Yeah. I've started running and I'm doing like program to get strong now.
Sick,
and my goal is Japan, February 2025.
You can't ride this year then?
No, because I did it in August, but I didn't have my surgery till November. So
you did it on your last day at the snow, didn't you?
Yeah.
I still can't believe that. I mean, I wasn't there, but I've heard obviously. I'm just like, how is it? And I've heard that you're almost unbreakable, sort of thing, and that you broke yourself in about 8 pieces.
It's totally unbreakable.
It's like for me, I can do something like crazy, but then I'll trip on the sidewalk or like trip over my toes.
Yeah, it sounds like
like something so silly and stupid, I'll trip and hurt myself. But like
she almost tripped over the bloody computer before.
I'm like clumsy in like general things, but like then I'll
blaze her on a snowboard.
Yeah. Well, I've seen her do full-blown cartwheels down the hill, ridden down and gone, are you okay? And she's like, yep,
no
fine.
worries, yep.
I'm like, no way, dude.
A lot of time it's the most innocuous little things that snap you. Like my broken collarbone, I wasn't doing anything at all. I was literally just switching the board around to come off a little jump, fakie, whatever it was, and just nailed myself.
Yeah, because I grew up riding with boys that would just be like, just go.
Just get up.
Push yourself.
Go. And so I'd be like, sweet. And it wasn't until I started riding with you that I actually thought about riding, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, you could tell.
Because I would just like, you guys, you look like you're going to die every time.
I was riding around with Claire in the early days when I met Claire, and we'd go riding through trees, and I'd be like, oh my God, she's actually going to die. Like, she's not thinking about...
Because I've just ridden with guys, that's it. And they were just like, follow my trail, just go fast, just hit it, don't turn. So I'd just be going fast and hitting shit and like, but wouldn't be thinking 3 turns ahead.
It was terrifying. Like, you're in tight trees in Japan, and I'm like, this isn't going to work. She's going to die. Like, it's going to get really bad.
But she didn't.
No, she didn't. And I couldn't believe how many of those trees you hit or ricocheted off. The other thing about Claire, you'll be riding behind her, and if there's an overhanging branch, she's that person who grabs the branch to clears herself.
Don't say I'm that person. And don't say I'm that person.
Yeah, I've been taken out.
No, don't say I'm that person.
Has that happened?
Well, yes, but the story is we're riding one of those really fast little cat tracks that's like off the thing through trees, and like it's
not a cat track, it's a roller coaster thing,
and you've like gone through the trees, and it's like that little roller coaster section to get you back onto the path.
So if you don't get back on,
you're screwed. And so you can't turn. You've got to follow this thing, and it's dictating your speed. So I'm there going... So
it's like a luge track through the trees.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so like, and coming up is a branch. I don't know where Al is. I'm focusing on not falling.
4 foot behind you.
Yeah, I just got to make it. So
we're doing the same speed. We started at the same time.
Branch is in front of me, and I push it forward and go past, and as it comes back, it ricochets and hits out, and he goes,
my legs just went in front of my face.
But it's like when you go under a rope, right? You're just in front of like the other guy, right? Yeah. Because you've pushed up, it ends up going back down, and just coat hangers next to you.
So don't say I'm that person. No, okay. I didn't know you were behind me that close.
Anyway,
anyway.
Talk about it.
I'm a bit of a reckless rider.
Reckless is the understatement, but I still was shocked when I heard she got hurt.
Yeah.
because I just
I was
thought she
doing
was made
something
of rubber.
fucking stupid too.
Yeah, it's always the way.
Just what it just.
Yeah. Oh, well. All right. Well, we should wrap this up because it's getting long.
Yeah.
I forgot to do the death threats to people who don't like and subscribe at the start of the podcast.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe. If you've made it this far through this podcast,
You obviously like us.
Yeah.
so
So
subscribe.
Do the right thing.
We need you to subscribe.
We don't want to
so
send
can-
around the hired goons if we don't have to.
That's right. We want to get money from YouTube, so click on
I
that
wanna whoop.
subscribe button. Yeah, we need sponsors, so click on the subscribe button.
Yeah.
I've got lots more stories, by the way.
So
I've
we're
only
gonna-
just scratched
yeah.
the surface.
We're
of a few
only
things.
this
Yeah.
is part one.
Yeah, this is part one of potentially.
Marcus will be
Marcus
back.
month.
Yeah, Marcus month might be the whole year. We'll get you back for sure when the new
To
product
do
comes.
some
Yeah,
product
for
knowledge
sure, yeah.
stuff.
And,
That would be cool.
We'll do another night of stories
Yep.
in the near future.
For sure. Well,
Thanks
thanks
for
for having
coming.
me, guys. Yeah, really
And
appreciate
a state of origin.
Appreciate it.
Oh, the state of origin for sure.
Yeah, we've got to do me, you, and Dan.
Oh,
we should do
absolutely.
that. You can host
Yeah.
You just
us.
call it the hate series.
Well, we
Yeah.
might have more mics
We'll
by then.
watch the game and record a podcast.
Oh, wouldn't that be the commentary?
Imagine how good that'd be.
Dan's
Dan
hating
will
on
be
everything. He's
fucking
got the ref,
hating.
the players.
Wouldn't it be
Hate
good
the
if you
cheerleaders.
had
Calling everyone cheats.
Oh,
you
Yeah.
guys
brilliant.
listen to it through headphones so that the camera doesn't pick up on it.
Yeah, we need to have it.
And then all
just
of it,
talk.
you can't hear each other, but you're all just yelling insults at each other.
Dan will be hilarious.
that would actually be really fun.
Yeah.
We should
Okay.
try that.
Why
Let's
not?
do it.
I'm,
try
I'm
it.
down. We'll give it a go.
All
All right.
All right.
Thanks for coming.
Thank
There
you
you go.
so
no
much
worries.
for
No,
coming.
thanks. Yeah, thanks for letting me share some of my stories.
Yeah, it's really
No.
cool history.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people would know you're Canadian.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Well, Russian, Swiss Canadian.
Russian,
So-
Swiss
Swiss
Canadian.
Canadian.
But actually born in Canada. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's really
Crazy.
cool. And as Australian as they get, really.
yeah.
And I
Well,
always knew nothing of like your life pre board riders because
Yeah.
that's when I met you. So
yeah,
I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, it's funny too. Like when I moved from Canada to here, like I was going to St Ives South to the school there, but I lost my accent within 2 years. Like I used to come
Yeah.
home saying like car and far, and my parents are going, "You're not saying car, you're not saying far." I'm like, "No, because that's how the kids over here talk."
Yeah.
And so I literally like proactively lost my accent within 2 years. But you talk, like other people that come over here as adults, man, they've still got their accents.
They
But
never
I
lose
totally
it.
lost mine.
Yeah.
Within I think 2 years, you couldn't even tell I was Canadian.
I think once you're an adult, if you've got an accent, you've got
it's
the
staying.
accent,
Yeah,
right?
it's not
yeah.
going anywhere.
Yeah, some of my English mates, I still don't know what they're saying
Yeah,
half
no,
the time.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, old mate's partner's Irish. He,
Well, they're hard to understand.
yeah,
sometimes.
he's tough.
His accent's not very thick.
It's not
though.
thick, but
Because
when
he
his
got over
sister
here and
was
he did the same thing. He was working in sales and was like, "Well, no one can understand
No one can
me."
understand me.
Yeah.
So I
He
need
goes,
to-
"So I'm just going to talk like Australian."
But
Yeah.
his sister came out at Christmas, and
Oh,
I remember
yeah.
we went out for dinner, and I was like, "Geez, Neil's sounding really Irish all of a sudden."
Oh, he picks up the phone and instant
Anyway,
Irish.
we've got to finish this thing. Let's wrap
Okay,
it up.
bye.
Oh, sorry. I was looking
Wrap
at
it up.
my phone then.
Wrap it
I
up.
thought we were wrapped.
Boardcast.